Happy Sunday, everybody. I hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you are having a fabulous day. And for our viewers in America, I hope maybe you got a short work week next week thanks to the holiday. Anyway, this is my first Sunday musing, but because it is a Sunday musing, we have to start with a chicken update. So, I'm at Nicky's, and because I'm at Nicky's, there are in fact chickens. These are Nicky's chickens. You can see them kind of from far away. And yeah, they're chickens. Little tiny, somewhat tasty dinosaurs that also lay somewhat tasty eggs. We've now reached pretty much the extent of what I know about chickens. But that's your chicken update, because it is a Sunday musing. And it wouldn't be a Sunday musing if there weren't chickens. Anyway, this week, Nicky sent the entire team a news article about Lotus, the legendary sports car brand, which had announced that they were going to be making 4 electric vehicles, which was really exciting. Except 2 of those electric vehicles are SUVs. Lotus SUVs. Is nothing sacred? I'll admit, I may have used some not entirely YouTube-safe language on that topic. But it got us into this conversation about the question of if there are some types of cars that you just feel certain car companies shouldn't do. And that's an interesting one because I feel like car companies have really done a lot of sort of market transgressing in the last several years, mostly in the direction of SUVs, let's be honest, because SUVs sell really, really well, and lots of other cars don't sell as well. So you've got Porsche has been making SUVs for quite some time now, a thing that when it first happened, a lot of people thought was ridiculous, but then they turned out to be pretty good and they sold really well. Lamborghini has the Lamborghini Urus SUV, a very expensive, very heavy, very, very, very fast, big SUV that other reviewers seem to really, really like. I've never got behind the wheel of one. I'll admit, it'd be fun. If anyone's got a Urus they want to let me take for a spin, I'm definitely up for it. But, you know, Ferrari has announced that Ferrari is making an SUV. Talk about nothing being sacred. Though, again, not like Ferrari doesn't make shooting brakes, or has in the past. So, you know, they're not just about sports cars, but they're still doing between a shooting brake version of a sports car and an SUV. But that got us talking about, like, well, what else? And there's some things I thought of. You know, when I was growing up, the idea of Toyota making a luxury car in America seemed really, really weird. But of course, Toyota knew that. So they created Lexus in order to sell luxury cars without some of the stigma about it being Toyota. And honestly, at this point, there are so few automotive companies left in the world, especially sort of in Europe and America, but also I suppose in Asia and even a bit elsewhere. There just aren't that many companies anymore. There are lots of brands, but there aren't that many companies. So it's harder to say, would it be weird if an automaker did X, Y, and Z? Because maybe for that brand, but that brand is part of a different company that could do something else. I think about it like this. For instance, the Fiat 500L, which was Fiat's sort of taller, boxier, but still sort of rounded, sort of compact utility vehicle, was basically the same car as the Jeep Compass. Now, Fiat making a slightly more utility-focused vehicle isn't unheard of. There was, of course, the Fiat Multipla and other cars over the years. They're not sold in America. And I don't remember if the Jeep Compass and the 500L, I don't remember which one is basically the car and the other is basically a reskin, but, you know, you think about Fiat and you think about Jeep and you think these are very different companies. But of course, they're kind of not. They're all Stellantis. Same goes for a lot of other automakers. especially the ones that fit under the Stellantis umbrella, which is quite a big tent. But it does complicate the question about whether or not you think companies should or shouldn't make a certain car. And what we know a car company for now may be very different than its history, and sometimes history can repeat. So before he owned a Lexus, my granddad owned a 1984 Mercedes. And if you'd asked me as a boy, like, hey, this company that makes this big, heavy, luxurious, slow, it was a diesel Mercedes and it was not exactly spry. Should this company make sports cars? As a kid, I would have gone, no, of course not. They make these giant sedans. What do they know about sports cars? But I would have been terribly wrong, of course. Mercedes sports car heritage goes back to the, mid-century, and they've made some of the most brilliant sports cars of all time. Even today, you've got the AMG lines, they still make good, if also kind of big sports cars. So yeah, when you look at companies, do you feel like companies should be bound to the market that they're best known for? Or do you think that car companies should push the envelope and do things that are different? And if we're talking about doing things that are different, it's just making another SUV count as doing something that's different. I'm not entirely sure it does. Of course, I'm biased. I like very small cars. And as someone living in America, if I want an electric car, I don't have a lot of choices that aren't big SUVs, or at least mid-size SUVs. So that does sort of affect my opinion. But it is an interesting question. We have a lot of ideas in our heads about what a company is. And sometimes it can be sort of upsetting when a company really deviates from our expectations. And we should ask ourselves why that is. Is it because we believe in some sense of brand purity? Is it because we don't like our conceptions being messed with? Or is it because there are legitimate reasons to want a company to stay in its own lane? I'd love an electric Lotus EVs, which I guess is basically a Tesla Roadster. I don't know that I have any interest in an electric Lotus SUV, but I'm the wrong person. I don't really have any interest in any electric SUVs, or non-electric SUVs for that matter. I will never own a Ferrari. Should I still have an opinion? Do I still get to have an opinion? Why not Ferrari should make an SUV? As someone who's never going to buy a Ferrari, I don't know. Maybe. What do you think? Are there brands that you would like to see stay in their lane? Or do you like it when brands push the envelope and do things really unusual? And what are some cars throughout history that you look at and think of as having really done something unusual? Another example I like to think of is that if you knew Citroën for the 2CV, well, then the DS would have really blown your mind. But the car was a legend. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for putting up with my first Sunday musing. I'll get smoother at these. And just as a reminder, chickens. Nikki's chickens. That's how you know it's Sunday. They're chickens. Thanks to all our Patreon supporters and everyone else who helps make what we do possible. Have a great weekend and a great week to come. Keep evolving.